Okay, let's. So here's my list that I've been working off of. So we have played. Let me mark this before I forget. The games that we completed are in green. The games are in red are games that I'm not gonna play because I don't want to play 3 versions of Tournament Fighters. It just seems stupid. They're too similar. There are differences in the games, but they're too similar. And this SNES version is just the best one. So, and then the one in blue is the one that I wasn't able to finish because the game broke. Um, but unfortunately, like I thought we were gonna get through more than this, but I think we kept getting stuck in the really long ones. Um, like TMNT 2003 took us like 6 hours. TMNT Battle Nexus. Oh yeah, I got to put that down. That one took us 7. We'll call it 7, even though the game said it only took us 2.5. What a crock. TMNT Smash Up was really short. Portal Power was way too long. That one was 6 hours. That was a port of a mobile game that they brought to PC, and it's another one that did some cool stuff, but the overall execution was terrible. I got to play one version of Turtles in Time. I got to play the arcade version of Turtles in Time, which is the bad version, admittedly, but it is still a good game. But it's I think the worst of the 3 versions, and I call Hyperstone Heist a version of Turtles in Time because it is essentially the same game, with a couple substitutions. But yeah, so we played TMNT 1 on the NES. We beat it. I only cheated a little, used some save stating, and the rewind function on the Cowabunga collection. We beat the arcade game, no cheating there. Turtles in Time, no cheating. Hyperstone Heist, no cheating. We beat a game called TMNT Arcade Action for the Nintendo DS. It was one of the most boring. Oops. It was one of the most boring games that we played. It was just horribly slow and uninteresting. And it was like 2.5, 3 hours long, which was rough. We did TMNT 2007 on the Nintendo DS, which again was what I think is probably the worst version of that game. It was like a rhythm-based platformer, and then there were some combat sections, but they were super slow and clunky. And then we did TMNT 2003 and Battle Nexus on the GameCube. The 2003 was just really boring. There was not a lot of variety in the moves. You really just walk through that whole game mashing the A button, but it was so long. Like the stages were incredibly long, and if you die at any point, you have to replay over again. So I think there's 8 worlds in that one, and the worlds have anywhere from like 6 to 10 levels each. So if you get all the way to like level 9 in world 8, and then you die, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of world 8 and play stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that happened to me in world 2, and I lost about 45 minutes of progress from dying on the final boss of stage 2, and it sucked. I was not happy. So I did use some save stating in that one to just make sure it didn't happen again. I don't think I came close. But that one was just boring, and then sometimes just inexplicably difficult. Battle Nexus was just brutal. It just kept going, and like there was just so many enemies on the screen at sometimes, and they would just like surround you and just hit you constantly, and you couldn't do anything about it. TMNT Smash Up was a Wii game that tried to be Smash Brothers, and it was terrible. But it was only, I didn't even write this down. It was only 30 minutes long to beat the story mode. But it's a game that's meant to be played multiple times. So you're supposed to beat it multiple times with multiple characters, and there's unlocks and stuff. But I'm like, no, thank you. And then Portal Power. Portal Power, like I said, it was a port of a mobile game. And so the controls were really bad. But it lets you control all 4 turtles at the same time. And if like you could either control one and let the other 3 be controlled by the AI, and they would mostly just kind of mindlessly stand there. Occasionally, they would kill something. But you all shared a health bar, so it was really kind of detrimental to let them do their own thing. But then if you held the left trigger, they would all group up, and then you could move them as like one cohesive like blob of turtle, and use all 4 at the same time. That one was tough. There were some challenging levels on that one for sure. Um, but the cool thing that it did was there was costumes that you could unlock, and the costumes had different moves and power ups and passive ability. And I thought it was a really cool system. It's just that the rest of the game sucks so bad I didn't want to play it. So if you could have taken like that system and maybe put it into like a better one of these games, I think that would have been a really cool idea. So they were on to something, but it was a crappy mobile game that got ported to the PC. The port did not do anything to make the game better. So it ultimately fell pretty flat. It was also pretty long. It was another 6 hour. But like some of the ones that I really wanted to get to, I wanted to try some of these PS3 games. I've heard mixed opinions on these. They at least look nice. But I didn't get to either of those. I really wanted to try Tactical Takedown and Splintered Fate. But I didn't get to those. And I wanted to play some of these Game Boy games, but I didn't get to those either. So like Fall of the Foot, nothing special, but it's really short. But Rescue is apparently like a Metroidvania for the Game Boy, which at least sounded interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it at least sounded interesting to me. But I didn't get to it. There's another game that I'm missing. I'm going to put it on the list because I'm going to make it a point to find it. It was called TMNT Danger of the Ooze, and it was for the PS3. And it's also a Metroidvania. And I just learned about this game the other day. So I don't know much about it. Except this is kind of what it looked like. But it came out on the Xbox 360, Nintendo 3DS, and PlayStation 3, which is a weird kind of combination of consoles to come out on in 2014. Which is kind of crazy to me. But I guess they didn't feel like making. I guess 2014. I guess the Wii U was still around. They didn't feel like making a Wii U version, and this one never made it onto any of the newer systems. So, but again, like I don't know if it's any good, but like I'm at least interested to see what it's like. But this is after I think this is after Ubi lost the license and it went over to Activision. So I don't know if the game's got any better, but most of the Ubisoft games are pretty bad. TMNT 2007 was an Ubisoft game, and so was Arcade Action, and I think so was TMNT Smash Up. I think those were all Ubisoft games, and they all suck. All right, let's get to reviewing this bad boy. The game number 21, Battle Nexus. Whoo boy! All right. So these are kind of some arbitrary categories that I've been using to rate stuff. The more I think about it, the more I should have probably got some like more concrete stuff, but it is what it is. At this point, I've already reviewed like 10 games, so I'm not gonna change it now. The graphics are probably the only thing in this game that I can't really complain about. They do look nice. The cell shading is a style that really held up over time. Because I looked at some of the other games that came out on the GameCube, like even TMNT games that tried to go for a more realistic look, and they just look very dated. They look very fuzzy, jagged edges. Just they don't look great. But the cell shading really holds up. And then with the addition of the actual animated cutscenes, like the visuals in this game are still strong. They are as good as TMNT 2003. So if I gave that a 9, I guess I have to give this a 9. The sound in this game is terrible. No, it's not that bad, but it's really repetitive. They say the same one-liners over and over and over again. Um, the enemies make really annoying sounds. There was a bunch of different levels with really annoying alarms that went off for like half the level. And then I ran into a bunch of sound, I'll call them bugs, where you would be playing as like Leonardo and you would pick up a power up and Michelangelo would make some sort of like comment that wasn't applicable. There was one time he just kept saying over and over and over again, like, yes, this is what you get for playing with fire. Like, it had nothing to do with the situation. So it was really repetitive. The music in this game, nothing special. It's very milk toast. Like, it's just kind of there. So I'm gonna give this one worse than uh 2003 because I think it took some steps back and it had some weird stuff. Gameplay, this game is not fun to play. It is really repetitive. First and foremost, it is unfair. The knockback is insane. Enemies will knock you so far back that you will like transition to another screen sometimes. I mean, it's just absolutely, and then they will gang up on you. They never miss. They can hit you while you're blocking. It's just not fun. And it went on way too long. This honestly is like a 2 for me because it is just as boring and repetitive as the first game. They didn't they had the chance to add like more combos and more moves to make it like more varied and they really didn't. The only thing they added was the jump attacks and then there was these charge attacks, but they took so long. You couldn't realistically use them in the game. Like, because you had to hold the button for at least 5 seconds to use the move one time, and they all had short range and they were hard to aim. So it was not worth your time because you would definitely get killed before you could ever use it. The controls in this game, the jumping was terrible. Part of that had to do with the perspective, which isn't really a control issue, but it made it harder to control. Uh, but the biggest thing that makes this one worse than the previous game is that they, for some reason, introduced some sort of like a delay. So like by the time you push the button and the time that they actually do the action on the screen, there's like almost a full second delay. And I know that didn't really come through in the gameplay because I eventually kind of adjusted to it. But I did complain about it a few times. But it was so noticeable and it made it so hard because the enemies attack you so fast. It was truly painful. So I'm giving this a 2. It controlled really bad. The story was at least decent. Everybody's an alien. We killed Shredder in the past and then came back to the future and he was still alive. So we killed him again and then he was still alive. So we killed him again and then I guess based on the ending, he's alive. So I kind of hate that. But at least it had like, again, it uses these cutscenes to actually convey a pretty coherent story, which a lot of TMNT games have basically none. It's usually just like Shredder shows up and steals something, and then you got to get it back. So at least I will give it credit for that. I'll give it kind of a high mark there. Innovation, this game is it's not innovative. It's very boring. It was very similar to the first game, and the things that they did add were not good. The platforming sections, terrible. They were so difficult, and not for good reasons. It's because like you couldn't judge the distance of the jumps, you couldn't get the angles right. The camera was uncooperative. It was not fun. And then they added the vehicle like I don't want to call them racing levels, but they were like you were on like a surfboard or in a car and you drove around or flew up and down. Again, it was different. It was something that isn't like common to a lot of Turtles games, but it was not fun. You couldn't die, which I guess was a good thing. But from a gameplay perspective, like there was no punishment for getting hit. There was no uh, there was no way to like really defend yourself in most of them. There was like one or two of them where you randomly had a laser, but most of them you didn't. If you got too close to the walls, you would bounce like halfway across the screen. If you died, it would just drop you from the top and you would slowly descend, and half the time it would drop you back into a pit or right into an obstacle and you would just die again. So yeah, it is literally, it would be great if you were speedrunning this game. It would be a great bathroom break level because you could literally just set the controller down and it would take the same amount of time as if you were trying your hardest. Because the screen just moves. Like you can't make it go faster, you can't make it go slower, and getting hit, it just keeps moving. So it was new, but it wasn't good. So as far as innovation goes, this one's low. It's not fun. Content and replayability. Oh boy, what do I give this? Because it had a lot of content, but I didn't want it. I wanted it to be over about 3 hours ago. It did have a lot of levels. Many of them were super short. So basically, if you took the first game and took those levels and chopped them all up into like quarters, you would have as many levels as you have here. So you really didn't have more content. It just looked like you had more content because there were more levels, but truly it's because they just took bigger levels and chopped them into smaller 2-minute segments. So really there wasn't more content than the first game, and it took about the same amount of time. But it really outlived its welcome, and I would never want to replay this. I'm probably going to delete it as soon as I'm done here. So I guess I'll give it a 5, because like if this was a full price game and I bought this back in the 2000s, I would have at least been like, okay, well, at least there was enough to do here. There was some challenge. Apparently there's more arena levels that I skipped. So like there's probably realistically like 10 hours of stuff here. If you play it all. So it's not a criminally short game, but I have no desire to ever play this again. So like compared to something like an arcade game or Turtles in Time, which I would sit down and play any day of the week, this one is a one and done for sure, and then you just never want to see it. So that's the verdict. So I'll do a quick calculation here. Oops. Nope. Not multiply. Do not multiply these scores. Do not give this game a 30 out of 10. I'm going to be disappointed that it's higher than I want it to be. Yeah, it's a 4.5. You know what? That's probably about right. It's worse in my mind, but when I'm being actually analytical about what this game does well and what it doesn't do well, there are things that it does well. But the other parts just made it so unenjoyable. I always like to do this. I like to see what other people thought of this. So like TMNT Battle Nexus Gamecube. I don't even know if this will be on Metacritic. It might be too old. Oh. 47. So I'm right there. Dude, I would make a really good game critic because a lot of these I have landed like exactly where the Metacritic scores are. Which to me says I'm being fair. Let's look at a couple of these. Another disappointment in the turtle world. I can still see all the potential the series could have, but unfortunately this year Konami took a step in the wrong direction. Yep. This guy is, I know this is a user review, so I shouldn't take it too seriously, but holy crap, this guy is absolutely out of his mind. It's the best of the three, and if you want to make the game hard, just play tournaments. They are very good. This supports my decision to not play the tournament. Another shame on the title, have a little more interactive with Game World than previous one, but anyways, it's worse. Horrible camera, absolutely. Only 3 different hits for each turtle, correct. No combos, correct. The best part is you can just go from start to finish without collecting useless gems or killing enemies to complete the level. Also correct. In some levels, game doesn't tell player what to do or how to do something. It's good that I have internet. What if I played it in 2004? I don't think I ever got to that point, but there were some times where I was like, I don't know what to do here, but I was able to usually figure it out within like a minute or two. I didn't have to look anything up in terms of gameplay. This game, controller and camera is too bad, but it has good boss figged, and graphics are god for its time. Character skills like other characters, playing co-op is good. Well, I didn't have anybody that I hate enough to make play this game with me. Game Informer gave it a 60. They got paid for that review. There are even a few lame vehicular bonus stages thrown in for good measure, but none of the various stage types offer anything close to depth or originality. I love that they I love that's the quote they gave. Avoid it like the plague and hope that we're all in for a Avoid it like the plague and hope that if we're all in for a trilogy, the next episode sees the heroes in a half shell pursuing the adventure that's not nearly as half-baked. Unfortunately, I don't think it gets any better. But like I said, it's kind of fun to like compare what I came up with what the metascore is, and on a lot of these, I've been very close. So that says to me that I am a good games critic. Well, guys, it's been an incredible month, and to end it all, I need to take a quick break to go prepare for the next part. We're about to have a live, interactive pizza party. Not gonna want to miss it. Please be nice to me. I'll be back in a minute. Stay tuned.